सनातन रघुजुग श्रीजी भगवान कृष्ण कीर्तन गान कृष्ण कीर्तन गान नर्तन परम प्रेम वीर प्रिय करो निर्माण पूजितम श्री चैतन्य कृपा भरौ चैतन्य कृपा भरौ भुवि भुव मारव अंतरकौ वंदे रूप सनातन रघुजुगौ श्रीजी विचारणैक सद्धर्म संस्थापकौ लोकानां हितकारिणं त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरण करो विचारणैकनिपुण तद्धर्म संस्थापक लोकानां हितकारिणं त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरण विचारणैकनिपुण तद्धर्म संस्थापक लोकानां हितकारिणं त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरण श्री चैतन्य कृपा भरौ लोकानां हितकारिणं त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरणागतम् विचारणैकनिपुणम् तद्धर्म संस्थापकम् लोकानां हितकारिणां त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरणागतम् Radha Krishna Radha Krishna Padaravindav Bhajanamritav Radha Krishna Padaravindav Bhajana Nandela Mattalika Vande Rupa Sanatanam Raghujugal Siji Krishna Kirtana Gana Natala Parau Prema Manidhi Veera Veera Janapriya Nirma Udita Sri Chaitanya Kripa Bharau Vibhuva Mara Mahanta Rakau Bande Rupa Chanatanam Yakuduga Shuddha 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 Sudev Siddharajalakim Dharmi Arjavadasa Jadagada Ranna Sada Tuchava Utvadi Nagane Chako Karunaya Mandalapati Sanim Sada Tuchava Bhutvadi Nagane Chako Karunaya Gopina Kanthasita Gopi Bhavara Samrita Dalahari Gopi Bhavara Samrita Dalahari Kallo Lamagnam Maha Vande Rupa Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Radha Krishna Gopna Sam Kund Radha Kund Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadip Dham ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Jamuna Mai ki jai, Guru Dwarka Dham ki jai, Swami the Bhaktivinoda ki jai, all glories to this, all glories to this. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
We are very happy to have you on our platform again.
I'm happy to be here again.
Yes, Maharaj. Please, Maharaj, you can proceed. The verse is on it's shown on the screen, Maharaj.
Thank you. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam yena bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutta Padagamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitangscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcome everyone. Normally we would be having this class in the morning according to the West African schedule, but I had to attend another meeting at that time. So kindly they've made this adjustment. I think the adjustment means not so many devotees of African Yatra are joining us, but maybe they will, some will listen to recording later.
Yes, more devotees will join as you proceed. More devotees will join, Maharaj.
Okay. So today we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, verse number 37. This is Narada's instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswating Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashta Prayeshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. The verse today is a mantra which Narada is teaching, he's revealing, and it's addressing, it's offering obeisance unto the members of the Chaturvyuha. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam Vasudevaya Dhimahi Pradyumnaya Nirudhaya Namah Sankarshanaya Cha. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam Vasudevaya Dhimahi Pradyumnaya Nirudhaya Namah Sankarshanaya Cha. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam Vasudevaya Dhimahi Pradyumnaya Nirudhaya Namah Sankarshanaya Cha. Word for word, Om is the sign of chanting the transcendental glory of the Lord. Nama, offering obeisance unto the Lord. Bhagavate, unto the personality of Godhead. Tubhyam, unto you. Vasudevaya, unto the Lord, the son of Vasudeva. Dhimahi, let us chant. Pradyumnaya, Anirudhaya, and Sankarshanaya, all plenary expansions of Vasudeva. Namaha, respectful obeisances, and Cha, and. Let me just turn this off. Excuse me. Okay. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation, let us all chant the glories of Vasudeva along with his plenary expansions, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Sankarsana. Purport, according to Pancharatra, Narayana is the primeval cause of all expansions of Godhead. These are Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Vasudeva and Sankarsana are on the middle, left, and right. Pradyumna is on the right of Sankarsana, and Aniruddha is on the left of Vasudeva. And thus, the four deities are situated. They are known as the four aides de camp of Lord Shri Krishna. This is a Vedic hymn or mantra beginning with Omkara Pranava, and thus the mantra is established by the transcendental chanting process, namely Om Namo Dhimahi, etc. The purport is that any transaction, either in the field of fruitive work or in empiric philosophy, which is not ultimately aimed at transcendental realization of the Supreme Lord, is considered to be useless. Narada Ji has therefore explained the nature of unalloyed devotional service by his personal experience in the development of intimacy between the Lord and the living entity by a gradual process of progressive devotional activities. Such a progressive march of transcendental devotion for the Lord culminates in the attainment of loving service of the Lord, which is called prema in different transcendental variegatedness, called rasas, tastes. Such devotional service is also executed in mixed forms, namely mixed with fruitive work or empiric philosophical speculations. Now, the question which was raised by the great sage, by the great rishis headed by Shonaka, regarding the confidential part of Suta's achievement through the spiritual master, is explained herein by the chanting of this hymn consisting of 33 letters. And this mantra is addressed to the 4 deities or the Lord with his plenary expansions. The central figure is Lord Sri Krishna because the plenary portions are his aides de camp. The most confidential part of the instruction is that one should always chant and remember the glories of the Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with his different plenary portions expanded as Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. These expansions are the original deities for all other truths, namely either Vishnu Tattva or Shakti Tattvas. And so ends Srila Prabhupada's purport to this verse. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurung Dinataranam. Let us all chant the glories of Vasudeva along with his plenary expansions, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Sankarshana. This is spoken by Sri Narada, and he is speaking to Sri Vyasa. He is inspiring Vyasa to take up the literary task of glorifying Lord Sri Krishna, to turn his attention from the preoccupations which he had in the composition of the Mahabharata, basically Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, and to turn himself entirely to the service of the Lord and glorification of the Lord. And for this purpose, he is giving a variety of instructions, which in this part, we can say is focused specifically on abhideya, on the practice of devotion of bhakti. It's significant that we are hearing these instructions from Narada, and I would say it's very telling that he gives this specific instruction to worship the Chaturvyuha. What I mean to say with this is that Narada is the paradigmatic teacher of that system which comes to be called Pancharatra. Often Srila Prabhupada, when referring to Pancharatra teachings, refers to Narada Pancharatra. And I believe there's a bit of a confusion here because there is some text which someone has translated and published called with this title, Narada Pancharatra. Unfortunately, this is not classical Pancharatra. This is a much later work from one scholarly estimate. It's from the 16th century, possibly from around the time of Lord Chaitanya or later. But Narada Pancharatra is a generic term. There are many works that go into this category of Pancharatra, and one of them is, for example, called the Jayakya Samhita, and the Jayakya Samhita is instructed by Narada. there's the Padma Samhita, there's the Ahirbhutnya Samhita. In theory, there are some 108 texts, and scholars have managed to find, I think it's about 70 of those, 70 over the last few decades. But it's interesting that Narada is here speaking in a sort of Pancharatra mode, we can say. For one thing, it shows us that the Bhagavatam, the comprehensiveness of the Bhagavatam is such that it includes Pancharatra teachings. Now, you may ask, how do we know that this is Pancharatra that he's teaching? As Srila Prabhupada is indicating in the purport, very beginning, he says, according to Pancharatra, Narayan is the primeval cause of all expansions of Godhead. These are, and who are the first expansions? They are Vasudev's, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. So this is classical Pancharatra teaching. This is a kind of step one in the, you can say, cosmology of Pancharatra, because Pancharatra, we usually associate it with deity worship. We hear that you want to learn how to worship Krishna in his deity form, go to the Pancharatra. Yes, that's true. But first, the Pancharatra literature wants us to understand how it's possible to worship the Lord in the deity form. And to do that, the Pancharatra literature has, some of the texts have very extensive, very detailed, very elaborate, and sometimes very complex explanations of how the Supreme Lord, usually referred to as Narayana, as is mentioned here, how he connects with this world, because Narayana is entirely transcendental. Here we are in this world of matter. So how is the connection made? So it's made through expansions and, of course, descents or avatars. And ultimately then, the connection is made through the Archa Vigraha, the Archa avatar. And the Archa avatar becomes the most accessible form of the Lord in this world. Accessible anytime we go into the temple or the home, go to the home altar. Anytime we remember the deity's form, many ways that we connect with the Lord in his deity form. So this is Narada, one of Narada's tasks. And another point which relates to all of this, which is not explicit either, it's not explicit in the Bhagavatam, but it's very much suggested, and I think it's appropriate to say. The Pancharatra is, as a whole, it is that literature which connects people of all backgrounds to the Vedic teaching. Prabhupada mentions here in the purport that this is a Vedic mantra. Why does he say it's Vedic? Because it begins with the syllable Om. This identifies it as Vedic. Well, some people will say, oh, but Pancharatra is not Veda. Well, that's a matter of debate. Shankaracharya said it's not Veda, but Yamunacharya said, yes, it is. And he wrote a whole book on this subject. But my point here is that Pancharatra is, in addition to being a system of worshiping the Lord in his deity form, it's also a system of initiation by which one who is considered not qualified in traditional Vedic terms, in other words, not born a dvija, a person, a member of the Brahman, Kshatriya, or Vaishya varnas, if one is not born in these varnas, what to do? Well, the answer is take shelter of Guru. Guru gives initiation because of his connection with the Lord. He is qualified to do so, and his initiation will be through mantra and also through yaga. Yaga specifically means the practice of worshiping the deity. And later in the Bhagavatam, in the 4th canto, we'll meet Narada again as he initiates Dhruva Maharaj with a mantra and a deity. He gives him the blessing to worship the Lord. Dhruva makes a murti out of mud, very simple murti, and that is sufficient for his purposes. He attains all perfection. The Lord gives him darshan. So, and it's interesting to tie these things together, that Narada, what is Narada's background? That will be explained in the next chapter, that Narada is coming from a very humble background. His previous life, he's referred to as the son of a maidservant. And that can be taken in the general sense that he is coming from a humble background, not of the second of the twice born, but something else. But we all know the story. He becomes qualified. And how does he become qualified? By serving the Vaishnavas, what Prabhupada calls the Bhakti Vedantas. And the crucial point is, because of that service, he is blessed by them. And in effect, their blessing works as a kind of initiation. Now, let's jump back to where we are here with this discussion. It's Narada speaking to Vyasa. And I would suggest one possible way of thinking about this exchange, Prabhupada said, from all angles of vision. So what is Vyasa's background? Vyasa's background is actually a mixed birth, we can say, or so it appears. One can say that his mother is actually a highly elevated soul, but the appearance is that she is a humble daughter of a fisherman, or she's been adopted, whatever. There's, I guess, different versions. The point being that one may see this discussion as Narada also accepting Vyasa as disciple in the through the Pancharatra system, and that's made very explicit, I would say, through this verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam Vasudevaya Dhimahi Pradyumnaya Niruddhaya Nama Sankarshanaya Cha. some more immediate context of this statement is that Narada is introducing the importance of sound vibration, transcendental sound vibration. That will become especially explicit in the next verse, verse 38. Mantra murti. Interesting that he will use that expression. Murti, we usually think of as a physical image. Narada says, iti murtyabhidanena mantra murtim amurtikam. That the mantra murti, the form of the mantra, is a form of worship, a form to be worshipped. And in this way, Narada is essentially completing his instruction to to Vyasa, after
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, we're patient with Maharaj. I think there's some network challenge.
looks like we're back. I don't know what happened. Anyway. We're always reminded that we are not in control. Yeah, I was just making the point that karma, the word karma, can be taken in a broad sense. Sometimes there's a reference to Krishna karma, which can be taken two ways. One is the karma, the activity of the devotee for Krishna, and Krishna karma can mean the activity of Krishna. Sometimes it'll be used in that way. In any case, that's the context of this mantra that's coming toward the end, where Narada is kind of wrapping up his instruction, and then he's going to, in the next chapter, he's going to tell his story. And my thought today about that chapter is that it's making clear what is Narada's background, and therefore, if Narada can be successful, then we can all be successful in spiritual life. So it's a hopeful message, but it's also telling the story of how he's receiving adhikar, the qualification to give this teaching to Vyasa, and of course to all of us. Okay, now I wanted to share with you a little bit more about Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Just, 2 days ago, I received a wonderful gift, the book Sri Laghu Bhagavatamrita of Srila Rupa Goswami, Shripad Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu's translation. of the Laghu Bhagavatamrita, in which Rupa Goswami elaborates something about these chatur vyuha, you can say the phalanxes, the military divisions of Narayana and ultimately Krishna. So I'm reading now. This is part 1, chapter 5, and this is text number 166. I'll read the Sanskrit. Mahavasta kyaya kyatam yat vyuhanam chatushtayam. Tasyadyo yang tato pashyas chitte tat adidaivatam tata vishuddha sattvasya yas chadishtanam uchate. So this verse is describing Vasudeva. Lord Vasudeva is the first member of the quadruple expansion of Godhead known as the Mahavasta or Chaturvyuha. He is worshipped as the ruling deity of consciousness, Adidaivatam, situated in the heart, Chitte. He is also said to be the foundation of pure spiritual substance, adishtanam uchate. Okay, so that's actually, its description of him started before this. I kind of skipped over, but I'll summarize. There's a longer verse, or 2 verses previous to this, in three verses, where it's mentioned that Vasudeva has an effulgence equal to that of countless newly risen suns. Sometimes, I found this interesting, sometimes he has a complexion like a new dark blue cloud, and sometimes he has a radiant golden complexion. Now, these descriptions of the Lord's form are very important in Pancharatra. One is directed to meditate on the form of the Lord, and in certain Pancharatra texts, one is supposed to, in some sense, identify with the Lord's form. Pancharatra also has a history, and some of it is more, we may say, impersonal, and then it becomes later more bhakti infused. But a common thread through it is the importance of mantra and the importance of meditating on the form of the Lord, which then is also identified as being present in the heart. And that's mentioned in this verse. The Lord Vasudeva is in the heart. Okay, then it goes on to say Vasudeva's personal expansion is the Supreme Lord known as Sri Sankarshana. Sankarshana is considered the second member of the quadruple Vyuha. He is also called Jiva, because he is the source from whom all jivas appear in this world. The commentary here says briefly that Sankarsana is a vilasa expansion of Vasudeva. There's an extensive purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Adi Lila, maybe, chapter 5, a long purport in which Srila Prabhupada argues against the Advaitavadins who say that Sankarshana is jiva because of such expression as we find here. But in this very short commentary from Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu, he says, Advaitavadis misunderstand his name jiva, impudently taking him to be a finite conditioned soul. The Lord, from whom all jivas expand, is not a jiva himself. So we can rest assured of that. Now, a little description of Lord Sankarshana in the next two verses. Lord Sankarshana's attractive effulgence surpasses the soothing rays of countless full autumn moons. He is worshipped as present within the false ego and is the indwelling controller of irreligion, of serpents, of death, Cupid's enemy, Shiva, and the opponents of the demigods. He is the destroyer of the universe, and he empowers Shesha with a part of his potency. So these are some intriguing aspects of Lord Sankarshan. We understand also, of course, that Sankarshan is Lord Balaram, or Balaram expands as Sankarshana, because that must be explained elsewhere by Rupa Goswami, that the original expansion from Lord Krishna is Balaram, Baladeva. So he's associated with the false ego, with irreligion, with serpents, death, Cupid's enemy, namely Shiva, and the opponents of the demigods. And he is identified as the destroyer of the universe. So all of these, we can just say, are intriguing. I won't linger on this. I want to go on to the next descriptions of Pradyumna. Oh, we get more Sankarshan. Yes, okay. Yeah. So we'll have more Sankarshan a bit, and no, this is going to focus on Pradyumna. From scripture, it is known. This is Rupa Goswami is taking the humble position. He says, I'm just reporting what is in scripture. From scripture, it is known that Lord Pradyumna, the third member of the Chaturvyuha, expands from Sankarshana. Intelligent persons worship him as present within the principle of intelligence. In Ilavrtavarsha, the goddess of fortune serves him and prays to him. He has a complexion like pure gold, or sometimes like a dark blue cloud. So again, like Vasudeva, who also had sometimes a dark blue cloud complexion or a golden complexion. He is the basis of universal creation, and he empowers Cupid with a part of his potency. So Sankarshan is identified with Shiva, who is the enemy of Cupid. Pradyumna is identified with Cupid as a part of his potency, becoming the inner controller of Brahma of the universal progenitors of all persons affected by lust and of Cupid himself. He carries out the process of creation. So Sankarsana is connected with destruction. Pradyumna is connected with creation. At this point, we might want to recall that Pradyumna appears in the Bhagavatam also as one of Lord Krishna's sons, as a son of Lord Krishna and Rukmini. And then Pradyumna's son is Aniruddha. Aniruddha appears as Lord Krishna's grandson. And this Aniruddha is mentioned in the next verses. The scripture reveres Aniruddha, the fourth member of the Chaturvyuha, as Pradyumna's expansion. The wise worship Lord Aniruddha as present within the principle of mind. His complexion resembles the color of a blue cloud. He is dedicated to protecting the universe, acting as the inner controller of the principles of religion, the manus, the demigods, and earthly kings. He sustains the creation. So it seems we have a tripart system here with respect to the universe, according to Srila Rupa Goswami, of creation by Pradyumna, destruction by Sankarsana, and maintenance by Aniruddha. And then Vasudeva is the source of all of them. So, yeah. Now, it just so happened, let's see, which one was this in? This one, yeah. It just so happened that I found another interesting reference to the Chaturvyuha. And now I'm turning to a translation of a poem by one of the Alvars, one of the 12 great poets, Vaishnava poets of the Tamil country. And one of these Alvars is named Periyalvar, otherwise known as Vishnu Chittan or Viliputtur Vishnu Chittan. And he has written a series of verses called the Tirupalantu. I have no idea how to pronounce Tamil, but something like that. Tirupalantu. And this is a poem which is a kind of a New Year poem, according to the scholar who has done this translation. And so I thought it's appropriate because we are quickly approaching the time of the New Year, according to the Western calendar. Here, New Year refers to a celebration in the Tamil country of Pongal, which takes place now. It takes place sometime in January. He explains here in earlier centuries, it was several days earlier. In any case, Vishnu Chittan seems to have been inspired by the Pancharatra literature, and he has praised the Lord with reference to the Chaturvyuha. And I'm just now looking. So this poem would have been written sometime in the 8th century, it seems. And it is still recited today. Oh, stanza 2, where's stanza 1? Here we go. Stanza 1, it has 10 verses. We won't go through all of them, but the first verse is referring to Pradyumna. And this would be praising a particular image in a particular town called Vili's New Town. He's translating it. And this would be a festival image, a standing festival image that's being praised. And what he's doing in this, at least this verse, is he is to invoke auspicious protection for the deity, for the Murti. And here is how he expresses this. He says, many years, many thousands of years, many millions of hundreds of thousands, may there be auspicious protection for the beauty of your red feet. O Krishna, the color of black gem, with the powerful arms that ruled the wrestler. It is addressing Krishna because he is recognizing Krishna as being the actual Lord, of whom Pradyumna is an expansion. He's mentioning some of the history here. I won't go into that. Okay, let's go on to verse number 2 about Aniruddha Vyuha. And this is also about an Utsava Murti, a festival Murti of the Lord, which is having 4 arms and taken for the devotees to worship. He stands rather than reclining. He has a Shrivatsa mark on his right breast, and he holds the wheel, the chakra, in his back right hand, and the conch in his back left hand. Okay, the verse goes like this. May there be many thousands of years with no division between us, the slaves, and you. Many years to the young goddess dwelling on your powerful chest at the right when you take shape. Many years to the flaming wheel dwelling on your right side, flooding your form with light. And many years to that Panchajanya, the conch that thunders as the battle of armies begins. So it's interesting that the Panchajanya, the conch, actually the proper pronunciation in English, we always say conch, but it's actually conch. Anyway, conch. Interesting that it's referred to here as thundering in the battle of armies, as the battle of armies begins. And here we may hear an echo of chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita, when all the armies are arrayed on the battlefield, and they all blow their conchs, their conches, each of which has a name, including, of course, Panchajanya. So here, the Panchajanya is associated especially with Aniruddha. Then we have Vasudeva. I'll just read the poem. It says, if you are among those enslaved to the prosperous, come and bring soil and fragrance. But you, enslaved to the rotten, are not allowed entrance to our society of 7 male generations proclaiming without guilt, quote, many years, unquote, to the warrior whose army wastes the males of Lanka, where the prosperous are Rakshasas. So this is a kind of obscure verse. The scholar Dennis Hudson discusses who might be referred to as the rotten ones here. And it may be referring to some political context in which a particular king may have been defeated by the king who had sponsored these poems. And the fourth, stanza 4, Sankarshana Vyuha. You came into the presence of him who appoints to the mandala of flower petals and entered our society. If you have a mind to join us, break the barriers quickly and come with us, won't you? You among the bhaktas with a mind to sing Namo Narayanaya and make the auspicious known in country and town. Come and proclaim many years. So this verse is a kind of invitation to the devotees to join with the devotees to glorify the Lord. And this glorification specifically means to chant these verses beginning many years. It's a benediction. May the Lord be protected for many years. So that's within the, of course, now called the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. This is these verses would be chanted. They will be chanted in celebrations in certain temples in South India. We may feel in our Gaudiya tradition not to have so much connection with Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. But the broader point is that we do, in an important way, or more than one, honor and follow the Pancharatra system, which is also known as Narada Pancharatra. And so it's very appropriate that we hear from him in the Bhagavatam in the beginning, in the first canto, as the Bhagavatam is still in process of being introduced. Yeah, so Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. I think I'll stop there and see if there's any discussion. I see some hands raised.
Thank you, Maharaj, for your nice
Hare
class.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, my humble obeisances.
Haribo.
Thank you so much. My question is on the beginning, the forms of the Lord, the deities, Narada Muni receiving a deity form of the Lord and a mantra to worship the Lord. So my question is on the deity worship, idol worship, and different kinds of idol worship. Because some religious organizations accuse us of being idol worshippers, but we worship actual Vigraha of the Lord. So
Yes.
we also know that the Bible says, talk about no man should worship an idol, like the Bible,
Right.
idol worshippers. So my question is, can my love for my wife or husband or children or business become an idol worship? And if so, when can one's activities or love become an idol? Because I read in the Bible somewhere it said, anything you love more than God is an idol.
Yeah. Okay, this is a big topic. But it gives me an opportunity to, to announce, or to, maybe I can't announce yet, but maybe it's a premature advertisement. But I've been working on a small book, which is directly addressing this topic. And it looks like it's going to be published by the BBT, by the Australian BBT. I was asked to write a book specifically to address this question of this challenge isn't what you people are doing, you Vaishnavas, aren't you doing idolatry, idol worship? So what I do in this book, in the form of a conversation, sort of with questions and responses, I begin pretty much with exactly this doubt. I'm putting the doubt in the, so to say, in the mouth of a student who is a sincere person. He's open, he's not hostile. And then I respond to him. He says, you know, as you mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, in the Decalogue, in the 10 commandments, usually counted as the second commandment is one shall not worship any, what in English is called graven image. When I was a small kid, I heard this and I thought, graven, that sounds really grave. It sounds very serious. And I thought it had something to do also with graves in the cemetery, you know, the place where the dead are kept. So no graven images. But the word graven means carved. It's just a kind of old-fashioned English. So no carved image. Okay. So how do we address that? Well, essentially we address it by saying there are two sorts of images. There are those which are authorized by a process, and there are those which are not authorized. I'm sure you know Srila Prabhupada gave this example of the post box. I don't mention that example in this book. I probably should have. But if we just make our own post box and put our letters in it and expect them to go anywhere, they're not going to go anywhere. But the authorized post box given by the post office, etc., what we are putting will be delivered. And of course, what we're putting is also an authorized process of putting. It's the practice. It's the whole practice of sadhana bhakti. And so it's actually a combination of, in fancy language, what we can call felicity conditions, which make the worship of the Lord in the deity form true, make it real, make it effective, make it accepted. And the biblical prohibition, one way we have to understand it is that it is spoken in a context in which persons have no idea about how they might worship the Lord except by the accepting the commands that they receive. But a broader point, and I kind of discuss this in the book, is what is idolatry? Idolatry is, yes, it's worshiping anything less than God. That's true. And therefore, if a devotee of Vaishnava worships Krishna in the temple and thinks only my deity of Krishna is Krishna and does not recognize or appreciate, or at least theoretically understand, that the Lord is present in the heart of every living being, what is that? Well, at best, it's called Kanishta Adhikar. We may say that's a generous understanding. So, but worshiping anything other than the Lord, that is idolatry. But another point is that not just the Bible, but the Abrahamic traditions in general, they're basically saying anything which we don't accept as worship of the Lord is idolatry. In other words, idolatry is anything that the other person does, the person that we don't like. And it's been said that the entire Hebrew Bible, a sort of thread which runs through the whole Hebrew Bible, is to put down the worship of other gods than Yahweh. In other words, everything else is idolatry. So somehow or other, that idea has persisted in such a way that people are not very open to try to understand how we might connect with the Lord through a proper process. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchate. And that is, of course, what bhakti is all about. Anyway, that's a bigger subject, and the book is, I've been told to expect the book is going to come out this next year. When the next year, I don't know. It's just starting to go into some of the stages of production after the writing.
Thank you, Maharaj, for your answer. Our next question is from Kavi Kanapu. Kavi Kanapu, please unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Maharaj. So, Maharaj, in course of your lecture, you describe from the Lagu Bhagavatamrita of Rupa Goswami. Is it Rupa Goswami? I think, yeah.
Yes.
About the Shatuvyoha. And so from your explanation, I was gathering the points how the whole creation is all managed and controlled, created by the Shatuvyoha. And you mentioned how Shankarshan is the source of the jivas. So I've been thinking about this quite one time. Also from the reading of so many of our trial books and Srila Prabhupada books also. Although Srila Prabhupada did not talk so much about this point in his book about the origin of jiva. He mentioned that we are from the spiritual world. And also, if you read from Nectar of Instruction, it is mentioned that the jiva is a tatasa shakti, which is marginal energy. And tatasa shakti means marginal. Be marginal means be marginal. And we have other associates of Krishna who are internal shakti, like Srimati Radharani and all our expansions, which make the jiva here different from internal associate of Krishna. And the Tatasa Shakti means they can either be here or there. So when you were talking about these delivery jivas coming from Shankarshan, it make it more clearer to me that in actuality, we are all from the Tatastha, that is the expansion of Krishna, which is Mahavishnu, or we call it Shatuvira. So, but we may have the chance of going to the spiritual world because we are Tatatsa. So I don't know. I want you to clear this point more and more, because sometime maybe sometime we may want we as a proud living entity, we may not want to take our actual position. That there are some other servants of Krishna that are internal Shakti, are eternally with Krishna, but some are Tatastha, which they can be given their free will, they can misuse it or surrender it to Krishna. So I want you to clear this point. I don't know, maybe you get my point, Maharaj.
Well, it's your point is a species of a kind of persistent discussion that comes up among devotees, and some devotees get very excited about and very concerned that it's like this. No, it's like this. It's part of that, sort of interesting, for some people, interesting question of whether or not we have fallen from the spiritual world and so on. And what I find with all of these discussions, as you said, this illuminates that jiva is somehow connected with or associated with sankarshan, suggesting spiritual identity. And I would put it like this: we are understanding reality, ultimate reality, and our own identity with a certain system of mapping provided for us, where the infinite energies of the Lord, and it's sometimes said the Lord has infinite energies, are divided into categories: internal, external, and marginal. And then the jiva is identified as marginal, and marginal is, you can say, precisely, it's not only what we are ontologically, but it's also what we are in terms of the extent of our power of understanding. We are marginally able to understand this ultimate truth to a limited extent through teachings of sadhu, shastra, and guru. And the expansiveness of ultimate reality remains something beyond our reach, such that when we try to comprehend what we want to call our origin, we short circuit. And we start using terms like fallen, not fallen, higher, lower. We use terms like marginal, and so on. But all of these terms are not necessarily getting us quite to the depth we would need to go to realize what we're talking about. So what I'm saying in general is, I think just acknowledging that we are Tatastha Shakti is can be taken to help us cultivate the humble spirit of acknowledging the limits of the power of our understanding. So, in some very important sense, we are we are part and parcel of the Lord. We are part and parcel of Krishna. We can even be called emanations from Krishna. And that is something so incomprehensible, really. So that it seems that we are forever separate from Krishna. And therefore, Prabhupada uses the expression time immemorial.
Thank you, Maharaj.
There's no getting, from here, there's no access to get there, back to when it was not the case. Therefore, we can only move forward.
Thank you, Maharaj. Our next question from Sahadev Prabhu. Sahadev, please.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you so much. You gave very, very intellectual classes, like really good for the academy. Maharaj, if you'll be kind enough to like give us like your address to like maybe a website where you have.
Oh, website. Actually, there's a brand new website, and I don't have it myself. But we can arrange. Maybe I see Odarya Chandrika. Maybe you can organize that. And maybe I can also get, there's Dharma Gupta. Yeah, maybe you can get from Rasa Dadiyari that link of that new. They've made a new website, which apparently is quite comprehensive. It has, all sorts of things. So.
Thank you, Maharaj. So my question for this class, I see there are many devotees here, and I have a couple of questions, but I'll first ask, I think, the most relevant. That is, Prabhupada did mention about the Chachul River, but it looks like he started from the second incarnation, because according to the creation timetable, Krishna expanding to Balaram, Balaram expanding to the Chatu River, and then from the Chatu River, Shankarshan expands to Narayan, and then Narayan again expands to the Chatu River. So it looks like the Chatu River, the only manifestation that is directly playing a role in the creation is Shankarshan. So my question is, what role do the other three of the Chatu River play in creation? That's my first question.
What? Yeah, I think you are referring to the account given to Sanatana Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the account of expansions. So, yes, I remember. There's the initial expansion of Balaram, Baladev, Narayan, Chaturvyuha. It's a kind of double, and that is maybe, as you say, only Sankarshan is referred to in connection with the world. On the other side, we just read from Lagu Bhagavatamrita that Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, all three of them are involved with creation. With Pradyumna involved specifically in creation, Aniruddha in maintenance, and Sankarshan in destruction. So at this point, you may say, well, wait a second now, we're getting two different stories here. So which one is true? And I would say, don't worry about it. We may not get the whole picture in one single, description. The Pancharatra literature, there are several texts, and they don't all agree with each other on these details. But any one that you take, the point is that any one of these that you take can be a way of meditating on the Lord. It's a way of meditating on the form of the Lord and in the different expansions. So that's why the descriptions are there, because these are, they're like dhyana mantras. You worship the Lord with these forms, and it can be a very complex practice when it's done in its completely full format. But one account may be different from another account. Of course, there's another way of explaining, and that is, what is it called? Anya Kalpa Nyaya or something. That, okay, this is describing a different kalpa. It was in that creation, it was like this. In this creation, it's like that. That's also possible. But I can't tell you, I certainly can't say, well, Krishnadas Kaviraj actually didn't quite get it right because Rupa Goswami says like this. No. And Prabhupada says there can be disagreement among the acharyas, and that is not a problem.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
My question is, can this aspect of the Lord, different expansions, which is difficult to understand, can they be considered as exoteric aspects of Krishna consciousness?
Oh. Sometimes we use the word esoteric for anything that we don't, that is obscure to us. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam. I'm giving you now esoteric knowledge. Rajaguhyam. You could say that's esoteric knowledge. Jnanam Paramaguhyam Me Tat Vijnana Samahitam Sarahasyam Tarad Angang Cha Grihanagaritam Maya. Lord Narayan tells Lord Brahma in 2nd Canto, Chapter 9, as he's introducing the Chatur Shloki Bhagavatam. Yanam Paramaguhyam Me. I'm going to give you the highest guhya, the most esoteric. And what is that most esoteric? Aham eva sameva agre nanyat yat sadasat param, etc. Paschadaham taresh etacha yovashishyeta sosmyaham. So those 4 verses are describing esoteric knowledge. But yes, we may say, I would just say it's detailed knowledge. I've always wondered about this with respect to Chaitanya Charitamrita. Why do we get so much detail in those later chapters of Madhya Lila about the many expansions of the Lord, telling us, in which hands the Lord is holding which of the weapons, in which form, with which name. Well, the reason is because that can be a practice of meditation. One can sit down and go through each one of those forms and picture them in the mind. That's a form of meditation. So that's a possibility, and we can say it's esoteric to the extent it's obscure to us.
Thank you. Next question again, go back to Sahadev Prabhu. Second question. Sahadev on mute. Okay.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj. I had asked this question before, and somehow, unfortunately, I didn't get an answer to it. And that is from Vedic arrangement of the astronomy, we know that the Earth is much closer to Earth than it is to the moon. The moon is rather farther away from Earth than the sun.
Uh-oh, I know where this is going.
I mean, as opposed to material astronomy, they have the moon closer to Earth than the sun. So
Yeah.
thereby they can say they visited the moon.
Yep.
Now, we know that in between the sun and the moon is Rahu planet. And when the Rahu moves, either towards the sun or the moon, then we have eclipse of the sun or eclipse of the moon. My question is, how are the scientists able to foretell, like in 30, 40 years ahead of time, that in 40 years' time, we're going to have eclipse of the sun, which means Rahu is going to move. How are they able to detect that Rahu is going to move at that point?
Well, I think your question is a question for an astronomer, not for the likes of me. I never studied astronomer. I never even really understood how the moon phases are working. It's supposed to be shadow of the Earth, but to me it doesn't quite make sense. But yeah, I'm just really the wrong person for that. As far as moon being farther away than the sun, that's another one that's interesting. Sadaputta Prabhu suggested in one of his books that the fifth canto Bhagavatam may be describing the cosmos from the perspective of devas, of the demigods. And so it's going to be it's going to look different to them. That's about all I can say about that. Some weeks ago, I did have a thought, for whatever it's worth, maybe nothing, but it's in relation to astrology, and I'm no astrologer, so this would be something to ask astrologers, but I just wondered if it has to do, the so-called distance is not so much about physical linear distance as it is about influence. So the influence of the sun is stronger than the influence of the moon on people. Are there any astrologers in the house? Anyway, that was my thought, for what it's worth.
Thank you,
But
Maharaj.
see, this is my experience. If I give some lecture like this, Bhagavatam, and then, okay, questions. And then one question, next. And the further the questions go, the more I find I have to speculate.
Hey, Maharaj, you don't speculate. We enjoy your association. That's why we have so many questions for you. We just want to keep you. We don't want you to go so soon. I want to ask you: do you have more time for us, or do we take more questions so we don't overburden you?
Could we make it just a couple more questions? I've had a really long day today.
Okay, we take only one question more. Sadev, do you have one question, or we take from the floor? Anybody has one question?
Yeah, if
Just one
anybody has,
question?
yeah. If anybody has, anybody can ask. Otherwise, I'll have another question. But I'll allow somebody else to ask.
We take one question from Europe.
Everyone's quiet in Europe.
Maybe Maharaj, because this verse of today is deep, it's esoteric.
Yeah.
We don't understand too much. Okay, I have one more question.
Well,
I want to know,
yeah,
why is it that Prabhupada did not allow us to worship these first incarnations of the Lord, Pradyumna, Shankarshan, and Neruda? He only puts Jagannath, Krishna, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Why are we not worshiping them also? Like in deity form in the altar, in the temple room?
Oh, one could probably give a lot of reasons, but I think I think the main reason is because Srila Prabhupada wanted us to focus on the deities that he gave us, because this is specifically the way followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu worship. Mahaprabhu was living in Puri for 18 years, 12 years. He was very much absorbed in his own bhajan. And of course, we worship Gaur Nitai as worshipers of the Lord, as they're teaching us in the mood what it means to be a bhakta, what it means to be a devotee. And so we worship them. And Radha Krishna, because we're followers of Lord Chaitanya. And but interestingly enough, with deities, Prabhupada said we should worship Radha Krishna in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan. Then I think the more immediate question would be, why didn't Prabhupada just give us Lakshmi Narayan deities?
Yes.
Because we are worshiping Radha and Krishna, but how we're doing the worship is in a formal way, with vidhi instead of raga, because that's appropriate for especially public worship.
Okay.
And the more you think about it, the more you see that worshiping Radha Krishna with Gaur Nitai, with Jagannath, it's a complete picture. Everyone is there. There's no need for us to worship Vasudev, Pradyumna, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. They're included.
Thank you, Maharaj, for your class and your time. We look forward
you.
I may ask you if you have time in January to come again from 15th upwards, because we already filled. We are filled up till 15th. Maybe if you have time, we can find a date for you when you are free.
Well, thank you. I'm a bit busy this January because I'm teaching a course for Bhaktivedanta Research Center in India, and it's taking me a good amount of time, really. Plus, I'm teaching 2 weeks of MIHE, Bhakti Vedanta course. So for me, it would be better sometime from the middle of February.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
Is that all right?
Yes, Maharaj. Very auspicious. Thank you. We ask all devotees to kindly unmute yourselves and let's chant powerful Hare Krishna for Maharaj for comment. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare Ram,
Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you,
And
Maharaj.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Maharaj.
Happy New Year,
We are grateful.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanande. Would be better sometime from the middle of February.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
Is that all right?
Yes, Maharaj. Very auspicious. Thank you. We ask all devotees to kindly unmute yourselves and let's chant powerful Hare Krishna for Maharaj. Hare Krishna, Hare
Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram,